Mussolini's Mistresses is a play in English produced by Aurora Theatre and Perilous Mouth Entertainment in Hong Kong. It is written by Claire Stearns and performed by Susan Lavender, Nicole Garbellini, Stella Garamberti, and Caterina Forti. It is part of the Italia Mia event 2021 presented by the Italian Cultural Institute of Hong Kong. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Diptii Shah and welcome to my channel. Today on Spotlight, we have two talented and beautiful Mussolini's mistresses. The first one is Nicole Garbellini. A warm welcome to you, Nicole. Nicole is the creative director of Aurora Theatre and also a very talented actress. The second mistress here, if I may say, is Susan Lavender, who is a veteran Anglo-Italian actress in Hong Kong, and she's also a radio presenter and a published poet. Welcome, both of you ladies here.
Thank you, Diptii.
Thank you, Diptii. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming on my channel. So my first question is to Nicole. As a producer of the show, what made you bring Mussolini's Mistresses to the stage?
So Mussolini's Mistresses is an idea that comes from a very long time ago, actually. I think I've been entertaining the possibility of doing this show for about 10 years, if not longer. At that time, I had the idea of doing it as a one-woman show and have Clara, which is my character, and she was a very predominant among the Mussolini's mistresses. I thought about her, and I thought about having a one-woman show. And when I talked to Claire Stearns about it many years ago, Clara really liked the idea at first, and she liked the idea, and she thought at first to go with the Petacci show, basically. But then as she looked into it and she did more research, she thought that Rachele Mussolini, the wife of Il Duce, was also very relevant. And therefore, she thought that perhaps the show could be concentrated on the two of them. But then as we kept going with the research, we found out more about the other mistresses. And instead, from one woman show, we decided to open it up and concentrate the show on 4 characters who were like really, really relevant characters at that time.
All right. So now we have not 1 or 2, but 4 mistresses on the stage.
Correct. To be fair, historically wise, there were ways more than 4. I
Yes.
don't know how many there were. Mussolini had, I remember reading that he had at some point like 8 women, not people, but women, going to his office for sex
Wow.
every day. So
Quite a strong man, I would say.
he was basically a sex addict. Like now the label would be sex addict, but back in the days it was like the Italian stallion. So
I would say stallion any day. No, and not just Italian.
So yeah, he had some issues, but yeah, he had like a very high stamina. So the Mussolini's mistresses were countless, plenty of them. We just concentrated on 4, the most relevant.
All right. So Susan, can you tell us about your character?
Yes, my character is Rachele Mussolini. So she is kind of the established wife of Benito Mussolini, although there was another woman, Ida Dalser, who it seems was kind of entered into some kind of marriage with him beforehand, and that he kind of covered over a bit. But I was kind of the official wife, and I gave him 5 children. Rachele is not educated. She's born and lived in a small village. And so that's why I play her with a southwestern English accent, sort of a country bumpkin kind of accent, because she is the most uneducated of the four women. And she plays the role of the, if I can say, you know, typical at that time in the 40s of the wife and mother, you know, doing all the right things, standing by her man, not really understanding the politics that were going on at all, but just believing in him completely and completely bedazzled by him, let's say.
Yes, totally blinded, you know, by her husband and a
Yes,
devout
that's
wife,
right.
if I would say.
Yes, devoted wife and mother, and she really didn't have the intellect or the experience to be able to understand exactly what his politics meant and the bad side of them. I must say she represented a lot of women in the 40s who really believed in Mussolini, because he was uplifting Italy on the international stage. You know,
Sure.
Italy had not had this presence before, and so a lot of Italians actually admired him. And he did things, you know, for Italy, like making the buses and the trains work on time and stuff like that, which hadn't been the case before. So you know, he was kind of, he's a conflicted figure in the sense that we know that he did a lot of harm. He was also loved by many Italians for being strong in favor of Italy and uplifting Italy internationally.
All right. So, Nicole, what about your character?
So I play the character of Clara Petacci, who was the most devoted mistress of Mussolini. She was 25 years younger than him. And it was like Mussolini was the only man in her life. Like, she couldn't find herself with anybody else. She was completely obsessed with him. And she was also heavily brainwashed by the family and by the whole society she was living in. She came from a fairly decent family. Her father was a doctor, and her status elevated pretty quickly once her role of Mussolini's mistress became public. But she was utterly naive. She was really like she was so young that I didn't feel like, the more I read about her, I felt like her brain was not really developed at all. And she was like gaslighted, manipulated, and groomed by this man. That's how it felt. So of course, like, you know, there are no videos or films about them. I just had to come up with my own interpretation. But she was heavily brainwashed, and she was almost groomed into it.
Yes, both of you are Italian, and both of you are so powerful, so talented, and independent in today's world. When you play these characters of an earlier time, of a mistress who is devoted and has no idea or does not want to accept the reality of the man, you know, she's in a relationship with, do you find any resemblance currently in today's world?
I agree. The type of woman that Rachele was, there are much fewer of them now in today's world, because even people, you know, living in agricultural settings have much more opportunity for education and so on. But I do think that there is some kind of core value there of the wife. You know, we've even seen some modern political wives standing by their man because they've had to in a political situation. You know, this is not completely unknown in today's world. I think it also it has a good side and a bad side. I mean, definitely, I think she should have had more education. She should have known more about what her husband was doing. But at the same time, she had this wonderful, faithful character. that I think is something that we can see as positive in her, being faithful to what is your position in society and in the world, and what good have you brought to the world. She keeps going on about having had 5 children, which today, a lot of women would find that a bit daunting. But still, for her, she had these children, she brought them up. She was devoted to them and devoted to her husband. So I think there's something positive we can bring into the 21st century, even though there are also many differences between Rachele Mussolini and most women today, I would say.
What would you say, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because like when I read about Clara Petacci, she kind of reminded me of the clan from Charles Manson, the kids from Charles Manson, who are like so brainwashed, gaslighted, and led by this very charismatic person who made them do the most brutal, horrific murders, but he didn't he didn't lift a finger himself. And I think that was a little bit like what was happening between Clara and Benito Mussolini. I don't know whether there are still people like that these days. I would say so. I would say yes, especially like when it comes to grooming. A lot of young women are like naive and young and unexperienced, and therefore they tend to trust older men in order to when they're promised something. So I think that's a little bit what was going on then. And to answer your question, does it still happen? Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure whether we can get anything good out of it though.
Yes. So even though we have progressed as a society, as women, we do find references even in today's world.
Like think about the Jeffrey Epstein case, right? Like he and his partner groomed so many young girls. They believed him. They went for it because they were getting something out of it. And then eventually they realized that it was not okay what they were doing or what they were asked. And they had the chance to speak up and go against it. But back in the days, in the 1930s, there were no social media. There were no, there was no access to public information or speaking out or women's rights or any of that. I believe like women barely got the universal suffrage at that time. Susan, I'm pretty sure you know that more than me. When did women get the vote in Italy? Do you remember?
Oh, in Italy, gosh, I'm not sure in Italy, but look, it would have been really late because, even in England, we're talking about the 20th century before everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
I'm tempted to go with like 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, but it could be later. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah.
So yeah, we just like basically like women just barely got the right to vote at that time, so let alone being vocal about male abuse and grooming and all of that. So it was a very, very, very different time back then.
All right, it sounds like a very powerful and interesting play. So Mussolini's Mistresses is a play of the women by the women. What can the audiences expect?
I think they can expect a play which is amusing. I wouldn't like people to take too seriously. Obviously, we know that bad things were done under fascism in Italy, but I think we have a very amusing take on it and an original take because it's seen by 4 women. Whereas if you read all the books and everything, you're always hearing about all these men, about Mussolini, about Hitler, Churchill, when we talk about the 40s. And these women were not really, they were neglected, not in the public eye as it was. And so this gives their very unique perspective. And each one of the women has a different perspective on Mussolini and on what happened to them and on their relationship with him. So I think it's a fun play, although it's talking about also some dark elements of Italian history. It's not too long, so it's great. People can have an easy night out, as it were, with this play, because if you're coming from work and you're tired and you don't want to sit through 3 hours, well, our play would be absolutely perfect. And I think it's entertaining. It's got songs in it from that era, which a lot of people haven't heard, and which are actually, I think, very beautiful. I mean, I remember as a child, my mother singing me those songs, and it was very much like in the aftermath of the Mussolini era when I was growing up, like in the 50s as a child. But as I say, many people were remembering Mussolini in a positive light, and a lot of these folk songs developed, so that's interesting too, I think.
I grew up with my grandparents saying, like, oh, Mussolini did this and that, and that was such a great time. So,
yes, exactly. I know, I've heard that kind of thing too. Yeah. Everything is perspective. It all depends on a person's perspective and on where they were in that time in history and how it affected them. So I think that's also a very useful thing that this play brings forward, that nothing is, completely black and white, or as you read it in the newspaper. There are many different aspects. It's like a diamond with different prisms, and it's good to see everybody's point of view on this subject.
Shah, Nicole, what do you want to say to the audiences?
Well, I conceived this project with Claire Stearns with the idea of giving these women a voice, because it was 1940s and 1930s, 1940s. And as Susan was saying, we had figures like figures of power like Mussolini, Hitler, Churchill, and so forth. But what about the women? What about the women who stood by them? What about these women who were by their side? And I felt that they never had a voice. They never had the chance to express themselves, because society told them not to, because it was not decent for a woman to do so at that time. And so, well, I thought it could be interesting in nowadays world to do so. And this is not a history lesson. So, we've been as accurate as possible. So for those historians who come and watch us, the information is quite accurate, if not 100% accurate. But this is not a history lesson. As Susan was saying, it is heartfelt. It's about 4 women who went through hardship, who struggled, who put their heart on the table for a man who, I can't say did not care for them, because it's not right, but he did in his own way. But he took it all, put it that way, for a man who took everything he could.
Fantastic, ladies. So congratulations from my side, and all the best for your upcoming show, Mussolini's Mistresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mussolini's Mistresses is in the theatre from 24th November to 27th November, 8 p.m. onwards. The address and the ticket information are given in the description box below. If you still haven't purchased the tickets, then please go ahead and do that before they sell out. See you there.